This is John Lyman again from Oakland Socialist in the third part in my series on how Putin has drawn the far left into his far right orbit.
In the last slideshow, I talked about how Putin had done so in regards to the so-called left support for the fascistic Assad regime and its counter-revolution in Syria.
In today's slideshow, I'm going to talk about this process in relationship to Russia's imperialist invasion of Ukraine.
We start with the Putin agent Alexander Ionov and his group, the anti-globalization movement of Russia. Now, in this context, anti-globalization simply means ultra-ethno-nationalism. Now, in December of 2014, Ionov held the first preliminary conference of the anti-globalization movement of Russia. Present at that conference were Russian fascist Alexander Dugin's youth group, the Eurasian Youth Movement, the Italian fascist Millennial Movement. From the United States came the ethno-nationalist Texas Nationalist Movement and the racist Confederate League of the South. But it wasn't just these ethno-nationalists, racists, and fascists. It was also representatives from the supposedly left groups like the United National Anti-War Coalition, the Black Agenda Report, and the International Action Center. Let's take a second to study these names and faces. Since the 2014 start of the Russian invasion in Ukraine, in the Donetsk region of that country, and even more so, since Russia's all-out invasion of 2022, groups like these on the so-called left have continued with the unholy clamor that poor Russia is just defending itself from the threat of NATO. By their silence on the issue, they obscure Putin's claim that Ukrainians have no national right to even exist. Take a minute to read this statement, which is one among many of Putin's. Another one who is prominent in this pro-Putin so-called peace crowd is Medea Benjamin and her Code Pink. Here she is, happily posing with supporters of Russia's invasion who are sporting the swastika-like Z symbol that the invaders have adopted. Benjamin's position is perfectly captured in this cartoon. Their position aligns perfectly with the position of the racist and male chauvinist Alabama Senator Tommy Tuberville. Tuberville said that the fascist Tucker Carlson's fawning interview with Putin shows that Russia is open to a peace agreement. It is DC warmongers who want to prolong the war. In conclusion, we could spend a whole hour documenting how the so-called left has allowed itself to be drawn even further into Putin's far-right web through this so-called left's apologies for Russia's imperialist invasion of Ukraine. How this so-called left has even further betrayed the number one principle of socialism, which is international working-class solidarity. But before we do conclude, we can't resist documenting the latest example, which is how they parrot Putin on the ISIS-K's recent terrorist attack on the concert hall just outside of Moscow. Here's another example of how the Putinist so-called left parrots the fascist-connected Putin. If you found this slideshow useful, check out the previous two on my YouTube channel and also on my blog site, oaklandsocialist.com. There, you will find other news and analysis from a socialist or Marxist point of view, as well as also a longer article on this issue, which draws all of this and more together.